Taught from a very early age not to depend on anybody but herself, Leyla Alaton has built a life that many would envy. She's on the board of Alarko Holding, one of the biggest companies in Turkey. She's an active member of a number of foundations whose sole purpose is to help people. And she's a mother of two, a job that trumps all others. Known for her vibrant personality and her straightforward manner, Leyla Alaton welcomed us into her office and shared with us a glimpse of her life. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you.
Leyla, what did you want to be when you were a child, when you grew up?
Well, I think I always wanted to be an international star. Why not? But maybe a pop star or a singer, but definitely internationally known woman.
Right. And then later on you went on to study business management.
I did. I went to a French school in Turkey, in Istanbul, and then I continued my studies in the States. I went to do my undergraduate in Fairleigh Dickinson, New Jersey, in business management. And then I went to the big city, to New York City, for my master's in social studies, which I don't count as any special degree because I had started my own business. I was selling belts, I was making money, I was happy, I didn't care about school, but I still got a diploma.
Right, so your first job was selling belts?
In a way, not really, because I started working since I was 13. Every summer, every vacation, I would go and do something, you know, at least at friends' shops or at the fairs or at the Istanbul Cultural Festival, you know, volunteer jobs. But I always was very active. I wanted to make my own money. I didn't want to depend on anybody since very early days.
Where does this come from? You have a successful businessman father, obviously. Was he a big influence?
Well, it comes from both sides. My mother is a European who saw the Second World War. So I was always taught that I should never rely on any man in my life. Not my father, not my brother, not any husband if I would marry one day, but not to rely on anybody, but rely on my own self, on my own career, and you know, not to depend on anybody. So that was my mother's teaching, and my father is really a very a feminist, I would say. He's a very pro-women man who always encourages women to have their own career, to pursue their goals, their dreams. So from such a family, you can only get a woman who wants to work, who wants to achieve, and who wants to be a role model.
Was your stay in America very influential for your life?
I always wanted to go to the States because the French teaching, the French school was very, very hard. It was very disciplined. Although I do not regret going to that school, I hated it while I was studying because I was also studying at the science section, which was very hard. And
have you always been an overachiever?
Not at all, not in school. I mean, grades never meant too much to me. I was not a brilliant student, and I knew that your performance at school is not the criteria to be successful in life. So maybe that made me feel better. But there is no, of course there is a correlation, but it doesn't mean that the number ones in class become number one in real life, and usually the opposite.
Right.
Anyhow, and then I wanted to go to the States thinking that it's a very colorful, democratic, very free, and then good university years would follow. So I always wanted to go to the States to study, and it was very much in fashion. Today, if I would be to go to university again, maybe I would go to the Far East, or I would go to India, or I would go to a country in Africa.
Really?
Of course. Why not South Africa?
Yeah.
It would,
to get your whole degree, or just like an exchange student for a year?
That I don't know, but I would say that in those days, the States was really the only dream, I would say. Today, with my experience of today, and with the world of today, I don't understand my friends' children that are at that level, at that stage, why they are again inclined to go to the States. I think Europe is also very interesting.
Yeah, there are more options.
In terms of having like an undergrad degree from Europe, and then maybe go to the Far East, and then maybe go to the States. But yes, I'm influenced by the States. In terms of women in business, I saw very good role models there. After my studies, I went to some American Women Economic Development seminars, and I had the chance to listen to women like, unfortunately she died, Anita Rodnick, like Ivana Trump, Faith Popcorn, and many such very influential role models. And I really witnessed many women who started their own business. And the idea of women in business, you know, start as an entrepreneur was very, very much in fashion 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Right.
Now they don't maybe even talk about it because women really achieved a certain level. So, and today this is very fashionable in Turkey because women really now they feel secure and ready enough to start their own business today.
And afterwards, after coming back from the States, you started your own PR company.
Not right away. I went into the, it's not really a family business, but it's my father and his late partner that founded Alarko, which I'm in the board of right now today. And I started as his assistant. And this was the second university for me, which was even more important in my career life, because that's really set out my very high standards. I mean, I was near a man who is really a genius, and you know that he has many books that people read, the students at the universities read. He always wrote in the newspapers, and of course the success shows what a genius he was. But I was his assistant, and I would learn the very basics of business, like taking notes. You know, people keep on forgetting things, and then they never take precautions. Taking notes, I learned that in my family maybe since I'm 7 years old, since the day I asked my father or my mother to do something for me. He would say, just write it down, put it on my attaché case.
Right.
It's as simple and as basic as that. And I'm trying to teach my kids today to do that, because I'm not supposed to remember everything. So taking notes is a very basic but yet very, very important thing.
Right.
I think.
Right.
And I experienced. So next to Üzeyir Garich, I went to in every meeting with him. Whenever he would go and speak in a university, I would be with him. In any meeting that he would have with the foreigners, I would be there. And he would even work on the plane. He would never waste his traveling time reading a book or anything else.
Right.
He would write the report or the outcomes of the meeting he had in that country. Imagine that we would find the report of his travel on our desk half hour after he would come into the company.
Wow.
It was ready.
Very efficient.
The secretary was, you know, would type it, and we would have it on our desk. He was like, you know, he was challenging himself, his standards. That's why, that's what I saw, that's what I started life with. Therefore, my standard is very high. I know how much one can do in one day. If you start the day early, of course.
Right. So tell us a little bit about what your day looks like.
Well, I'm an early riser. Thank God that I'm an early bird. And I start the day at 6. I take my sons, now my son, because the other one goes very close to home, to school.
You take him yourself personally?
Yeah, I take him every day, every school day to school, which takes an hour. And we speak a lot on the way. We cuddle a lot. I still can kiss him because he's a 10-year-old boy.
Right.
And we have a very good time together. I call it a very quality time. and he can ask me a lot of questions. We can, of course, do some homework anyway, if necessary, or listen to the news, or listen to music. And then I would go and do sports, not every day, but you know, as much as I can. And then I would come to the company or go to a meeting that is in the city. That's how my day would start. I would be in the company most of the day. For lunch, usually we have guests. Many times we have ambassadors, journalists, foreign press, consul generals, business, anything. Friends even sometimes who are visiting. So it's a busy day. Once it starts, it's a very busy day because I'm also in lots of boards, advisory boards. I'm not only working for Alarko, I can say that I work for many other institutions or foundations. So I have a very busy day, and I try not to go out in the evenings if I don't really have to. And then because my sons are, you know, only 10 and 12, and I'm a single mother family, so I try to do my best to go home as early as possible.
It's very important for you to spend time with your children, some quality time.
Exactly, and nothing beats that anyhow.
Yeah, definitely. Can you tell us a little bit about the story, the beginnings of Alarko?
Well, the beginnings of Alarko, as they always say, and it's written everywhere, that it started in such a small room that when my father was inside, the partner had to go out. When Mr. Gary was inside, my father had to go out. It was so small. And when the client came, I don't know where they went, but it really started in very, very, very modest conditions. And my father was just back from Sweden. He went to Sweden as a welder, you know, and he hadn't been to the university, but he had learned Swedish before going there because he's such a genius of a guy. He learned Swedish before going, from the cassettes at the time. And anyhow, his father begged him to come back to Turkey, which he did. And when he came back, he knew he wanted to be in that field of air conditioning, of, you know, heating, cooling systems. And he met Mr. Gary, his life partner, his really other half. And then he had a diploma, and he was an engineer, and he had worked for a company that is still alive today. And I think the two of them got together. They convinced each other that they can start a business. But it's not that they were childhood friends or anything. But it's really very interesting how their marriage, how their partnership developed. And it became such an example, really, to the business community, at least in Turkey. Their principles are even taught at schools. I mean, because partnership is even more difficult than marriage, as we know. It's really a very, very difficult task, and there is so much you have to put into it. So they develop this art of partnership, and it's really an art. And the way they explained it, the way they gave their secrets away, is very admirable. And Alarko's success is based on that
partnership,
on that close and fair and good partnership. It's really, that's why Alarko is successful.
Yeah, and Alarko has become very, very successful. Today it is very active in many, many different areas.
It is very successful, thank God, because it's run by professionals. It was another very pioneering, they would say, we don't want to have our kids to have the burden of running a company. We want them to be owners, shareholders, and that's also another art. That's what they tried to teach us. So we worked at the very beginning as professionals, but you cannot be a professional and a partner. You cannot give